Good morning, everyone. My name is Davide Terlingo, Head of International Arts at the Arts Council. So we start today's session by, first of all, sharing my screen. I have a short presentation. That presentation will really focus on the essential elements of the guidelines. Most part of the guidelines are similar in nature across all our funding programs. So I will just focus on those elements that are most specific to this scheme, to the International Residency Initiative schemes, or IRIS in short. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact our team, the International Arts teams. Our contact details are on the Arts Council website under the International Arts page. And we also then show a number of supporting documents and supporting material, just to give a sense of what is necessary for this program. This is actually the program doesn't have anything that is not really in line with our general templates. So hopefully there will be nothing new today. And just a reminder also that this program is only open to arts organizations based in Ireland. Okay, so that's the only applicants that are eligible for this program. Okay, so I'll start now sharing my screen. Okay, so this is just short introduction. I think just to set some context around the program, it is something that is always worth remembering that our programs often are really contextualized within our policy frameworks. This is not essential, but I think it is beneficial to be aware of the international arts policy, and particularly the point about the artist that is in the international arts policy. I think it's quite helpful, to really try to understand what this program is trying to achieve. Okay, and in particular, um, there is a section in the international arts policy that is focused on the artist and the international arts practice. Uh, it's really there to provide opportunities for artists to extend the reach of their work and the resources available to the artist. So this is one of the perhaps policy elements that also reflected in the program that we're discussing today, but also in a way to function as an extension to existing funding programs. The Arts Council already has a quite broad range of funding programs that allow for the application of international activities, for instance, bursaries, projects, arts grants funding, strategic funding. But also we want to enable, in a way, complementary supports aimed at prioritizing stable exchange frameworks. So stable exchange frameworks is quite important concept to understand over short-term once-off opportunities. So it is really there to extend, as I say, the framework that support artists, rather than perhaps supporting fragmented individual initiatives. So this is the purpose of the policy that is then reflected in IRIS. So it's just, I think, worth mentioning the policy framework. It's also important, I think, to always reflect on the fact that all our programs are also embedded within our corporate policy, making great artwork, and it's also priorities in terms of audience development and art form development, and developing the arts in Ireland. Okay, so this is quite, I think, useful thing to keep in mind. Now, just to give you a sense of how the decision process happens for this program, which is, again, not new for some of our funding programs. After you submit your application, what happens is that your application is checked for eligibility, and there is a very clear list of eligibility criteria in the application form. It's really like quite univocal. So we're not going to go into the details. It is just for arts activities. As I mentioned before, the applicant needs to be an arts organization, and the application must be submitted, within a certain time frame, which in this case, the deadline is Thursday, the 6th of April. It needs to be submitted through our online system. So those are very common components within our funding frameworks. So there's nothing new there. If you submit your application after the deadline, your application will be deemed ineligible. If some of the supporting material or is not submitted, then your application will be deemed ineligible. That means that your application will not be assessed, will not be considered, for funding. Once your application has been deemed eligible, what happens is that there is a first initial assessment done usually by advisors or staff when the advisors are not available. And then the application is shortlisted or not shortlisted. But keep in mind that our shortlisting process is quite inclusive usually. So the shortlisting process is just to deal with very large volume of applications that we have at the Arts Council, usually thousands of applications across all our funding programs. But for this kind of program, I say our approach is to be inclusive and to really just not to shoot the application when there are significant gaps in the application or supporting material. Okay. But after the applications have been shortlisted, the decision is actually taken by a peer panel. So keep in mind that when you are therefore present your application, you present your application to a number of people, and the most crucial people are really these panelists. Usually we invite 4 different panelists. The panelists are practitioners, people working in the arts. We try to have a panel that is as diverse as possible in sense of experiences, practices, and representation. And the panelists are the people who decide who gets funded, who doesn't get funded, based on a dialectic process, discussion process, where each application is looked and discussed one at a time and in a formal way. And then there is a scoring process, and the application at the highest score get funded over those that have a lower score. Okay. At the end of the panel. Okay, this is the way in which decisions are taken. So keep that in mind also, that you're therefore speaking to people who might not necessarily know your organization or what you do. Okay, now going to the application guidelines proper. The first chapter of the guidelines really start with the purpose. Okay, I just extracted here 2 of the key concepts. What IRIS is trying to achieve is to create opportunities for transnational exchange and cooperation. And it is really, its purpose is to facilitate diverse residencies that involve partnerships with organizations based abroad. Okay, so those are 2 key concepts. And in a way, what we're trying to say that the emphasis of this program is on structures and relations rather than content and output. So the emphasis is really, we're trying to encourage and facilitate I can say, yeah, frameworks that are well structured and clear, and that they provide really strong, supportive environments for artists to grow, to develop their practice, and to engage with peers abroad. Okay, but the quality of the partnership with the organizations based abroad is also very important. Okay, it is therefore a program that does not put so much emphasis on how you define a residency, or perhaps what kind of art form, or how you define your practice, or perhaps the specific nature of the work that each artist is bringing as part of his residencies, but it's more based on the sort of meta frameworks or the overarching frameworks. It gives you quite lots of freedom, okay, to define really what you want to do. Actually, that was quite evident last year. I was even surprised sometimes, and I learned a lot about the different ways in which a residency can be conceptualized. So that is good. Okay, we're trying to do that. Now, in terms of priorities, again, this is an exact copy and paste of the 4 priorities. They're quite important. The wording that we choose it has a specific reason. It reflects our policy priorities, and also really guides applicants to determine how we assess our how we assess the applications. These priorities will be then reflected in the assessment criteria. I will be discussing them in a moment. So just want to focus on these points briefly. So the the priorities are based on the clarity of the proposal, the proposed residencies, in terms of artistic aims, feasibility, and cooperation frameworks. Okay, so when we assess the application, we see how clear are all these elements, expressed in the application itself. The high quality of supports and opportunities offered to artists and or arts practitioners. So it's in terms of really how well, I mean, it is really quite clear. I found difficult to rephrase it in a clearer way, but how, what is the quality of the support that are offered to artists. But I also would like to point out that we mention arts practitioners for a reason, because the program is not only open to artists, but also, let's say, to translators, curators, so anybody who really works in the arts as an arts practitioner. Okay, so that's why we have this addition in this program. Another priority is the high level of reciprocal engagement and the balanced level of investments between partners. So this means that we don't want to see just nominal partnerships, but truly engaged, truly, how can I say, equal partnerships, between the various applicants involved in this, sorry, between the applicants and the organization based abroad. But also we want to see a good amount of, risk sharing, that there is a true risk sharing within these partnerships. Okay, this does not mean that we want to see much funding. This is not what we mean. Okay, we just want to see some, I can say, genuine level of, say, risk sharing and resource investment. The coherence between the proposed artistic activities and the resources available to the residency. Okay, so again, this is just to make sure that the proposed activities are aligned or respond, to the kind of infrastructures, the resources, the level of ambition is matched by the level of resources, by the budgets, and both financial and, say, infrastructural, but also in terms of expertise that are present in the application. So the emphasis here is on the coherence of all elements as part of a whole and risk sharing. Okay. So in terms of the priorities. Now, additional information, I think just something to add is that now the residency initiatives do not require any kind of public-facing artistic activity, so there is no need to formal need to involve the public or to have a showings or to do educational activities or anything like that as part of residencies. However, given all equal elements within two different applications, and as part of the policy priorities that I mentioned before on making great artwork, in general, if there are elements of audience engagement, they are considered as positive, but this is not formal requirement, okay, to do so. Also, another point that I would like to bring to your attention is that remote residencies are also eligible under the scheme. So it is also possible to conceive residency programs that do not require actual physical travel or mobility, actual physical mobility. They could take place as perhaps writer's residence that is done through just presence in a blog post or on a website or on a virtual location, let's say. So that's also possible. Okay, this point is quite important, very extremely important, because this is usually the main reason why applications are deemed ineligible. Okay, to make sure that you have all the supporting material required. Okay, it's very important. It's not highly demanding. Okay, what we are requiring is, in addition to the complete application form, you're also required to provide two things. One is a detailed budget setting out proposed income and expenditures for the residency program. Okay, this is in addition to the summary budget that is in the application form itself. So if you go into the application form, we will go actually there in a moment. You'll see that there is an overall very generic budget at the end of the application form. We require this generic budget. It is important for us to extrapolate data information that is consistent across all applications. That's why we're asking people to fill in this generic application, budget that is in the application form. But in addition to this, you need a separate document, usually is an Excel sheet, that has more detailed breakdown of all your costs and expenditure. Okay. This year, we have introduced also the option to use either your budget template, okay, your budget, okay, in the way you want to present it to us, as long as it's on an Excel document. Or you can use actually download and use a budget template that our team has created for you if you find it helpful. This is because when we had the review last year, it was 50-50, equal amount of people that said that they would have preferred to have an Arts Council budget template, and others that said they would rather use their own template. So we decided to do, this optional budget template. Okay, you can use, say, your own, I repeat, or the one that we have created, but you must submit an additional budget, detailed budget. And the other thing that you must submit is the memorandum of understanding. Okay, is a form available for download on our website. And the memorandum of understanding is between the applicant and the main partner. So this is just the main partners only. I will show you this memorandum of understanding in a moment. You don't need to include all marginal contributors or associated organizations, just the formal partners, the one that actually part of the residency program in terms of equal sharing of risk and also investing resources. Sorry, did somebody waiting in the waiting room? I just admitted. Okay. Now I am just giving a sense of the assessment criteria in more detail. This is what we use to, as I say, for the shortlisting process. The first criteria is the quality and suitability of the proposal. Some of these criteria, they're quite common across all our funding programs, but I've highlighted some that are more specific, more important, but they're all, they're all important. So just to say that when we assess the quality and suitability of the proposal, is really we consider the track record of the applicant organization and all partners involved. Therefore, the track record also in terms of how relevant the track record is in relation to the nature of the activities proposed. The quality of engagement with artists, as practitioners, and the public, where relevant in terms of the public. I say you're not necessarily required to do so, but when you do so, we assess the quality and the coherence of activities in relation to the overall artistic aim. Okay, these are the three main assessment criteria for the criteria 1. Criteria 2, the purpose of the award. This is a direct reference to the purpose that I mentioned before. So we assess the level of reciprocal engagement and balance of investments between partners. The quality of supports offered to artists and or practitioners is very important. Capacity to enable active engagement with new and diverse artists, communities, and audiences. Build on new opportunities and or the likely impact in the short term, medium term, and long term. So see, this is really the purpose of the award is this is a substantial reference to frameworks, let's say to the frameworks that I discussed before. And finally is the feasibility. And in these terms, we look at the capacity to deliver on the proposal in terms of operational planning, how clear plans are, quality of reciprocal engagement between the partners. Once again, stress the importance of these frameworks, in the quality and the level of support, the level of available resources in relation to the program, and the financial information provided. Okay. So these are the assessment criteria. If you have any questions, then I'll be happy to expand on these points if needed. Okay, so this is a general overview of the guidelines, of the key elements of the guidelines. And I'm now moving to the application form itself. The application form is quite similar to the application forms across some of our funding programs. So again, it's nothing particularly new in this, but if you're new to our funding programs, you will see that it's quite clearly structured. You just require to enter your name, and there are some sections that are only relevant if you work with children or with vulnerable adults. In this case, you are required to provide additional documentations. There is a section where you are asked to identify the art forms that are relevant to you. This helps us then to assign the application form to different teams for the shortlisting process that I mentioned before. We ask you to tell us about your organization. I mean, most of the times people who assess the application will probably know your organization, but do not give for granted that all people will do, particularly say the panelists, so that you can tell us something. We also usually anyway check the background of the organization online if we don't know them well. There is a section here where is the summary of your proposal, where you ask to enter, sort of 3 short bullet points. Please keep in mind that these bullet points are the one we use on our website. If your application is funded, okay, only when your application is funded, we usually identify the organizations that receive the funding, how much they receive, and what for. Okay, this is the information we use, okay, on our website. And this is the main section of the application, okay, the details of your proposal, where you discuss what you're planning to do in reference to the purpose and priorities that we discussed before. Okay, so you describe kind of activities. Then there's a section where this is just there to help applicants really reflect on the assessment criteria that I presented a couple of minutes ago, in sense of discuss how your activities meet the assessment criteria. Okay, these are the most schematic segments of the application. Here you ask to identify in broad terms the type of activity, where they're taking place, and when they commence and when they end. Please keep in mind that the Arts Council does not provide, as a general rule, we do not provide retrospective funding. So just really here mention activities that will take place after decisions taken place. Therefore, I would recommend to really seek funding for applications starting from June 2023 onwards. Definitely not before the funding deadline. This section asks you to mention the partners involved in your proposal. These are the same, need to be the same as in your memorandum of understanding, which I will show you in a moment. Okay, so this is the name of the organization, where they are located. That's all. These are the organizations that are actually contributing financially and in terms of resources to your proposal. And this section is for all other groups involved or organizations involved. You don't need to list the individual artists, so there is no need for this application to come to us already with the names of all the artists. If you have them, if you think that they are important for your application, please, you can mention them in the main body of text, in the main proposal description. But there's no need, to say, to mention every artist here, but this is mostly about sort of those organization groups that might be also contributing, to the application without necessarily being formal partners. Okay, and this is the summary budget that I mentioned before. Okay, so this is really something very useful for the Arts Council, because this is where we go and find sort of data and that is consistent across all application, across all art forms and so on. Okay, so you can put all the key elements, okay, of your budget in terms of expenditure and and income. Okay, it's a very generic, and this will then determine what you are requesting from the Arts Council. This calculation will be done automatically. Okay, this is the application form. Again, if you have questions, I will take them later. Okay, this is the memorandum of understanding. It's a very simple Word document, and where you're asked to identify the applicant and the total amount that you're requesting, the partner organization, and the total amount that each partner organization is committing to this proposal. This is the proposal overview. Is the same that you put in the application, really. It's the short bullet points. Okay, that were so you don't need to rewrite anything. You can just copy and paste this information. This is just ask you to enter the country and the number of residencies here for each country. And this is a declaration, okay, where you can just type your name. Okay, you don't need to put e-signatures. I mean, you can if you want, but you can just type the name and the position, okay, for each organization. So one for each organization. Okay, that's the memorandum of understanding. So fairly simple. And I show you the budget template, which you can use if you want to, or you can use your own budget. Okay, so this is something that we have created and tested. This is a new thing we introduced this year. Hopefully you will find it helpful. The budget template has two tabs, one for income and one for expenditure. Okay, in the income you enter your name and your organization name and the ARN. There is a generic breakdown of initial cost here, and you can add other items as required. And please do not enter any in-kind income in this section, but there is a separate section where to enter in-kind income. So you identify the type of in-kind income, then you add some details, okay? And you enter the figures in the white cells only, okay? As you can see, all other cells will fill in automatically. So if you enter here, see, all calculations will be done automatically. There's no need for you to enter any figures in the yellow or gray cells. Okay. So once you've done your income, okay, you can move to the expenditures. We provided general sort of groupings, and rather than here, there is, as you can see, freedom for you to name each activities based on different groupings. Some linked to activities themselves, other to communication costs, which includes also marketing and travel and subsistence and personal cost, those perhaps of if you need technicians or any sort of technical support, or any sort of contract-based engagements. Again, here you are required to enter the name of activity here. Here you can add, additional specifications and the nature of type of expenditure. Now, the way you do with this is, let's say, you can enter something like, and just to give a bit of general sense, then you can have maybe you have two workshops and unit cost is 200. As you can see, all calculations will be done automatically. I hope you can see. I hope it's big enough. Maybe make it a bit bigger. All calculations will be done automatically, okay, and then will be reported down also automatically. Okay, so there is no need for you to enter anything here. Okay, and it will also automatically report the figures that they were inside the income here. And will essentially then make automatic calculation of the amount requested to the Arts Council. I would like to draw your attention also to this additional line 99. This is for access costs for artists or participants with disabilities. Okay, so the maximum amount applicable is 50,000 euro, but you can require an additional amount of money. For instance, if you require 5,000 euro, additional 5,000 euro here, okay, you can enter them here, which means that the total amount requested from you would be 55,000 euros. So this amount of money for access costs comes from a separate budget that the Arts Council has and is additional, to the maximum amount applicable. This is only in case, say, you intend to provide resources and equipment or whatever you need for enabling people with disabilities, to access your activities. Okay, I hope that this is sufficiently clear. But say we'll have now a chance to ask some questions. So we stopped the recording.